This week I want to introduce Dr. Chris Kirkpatrick, Northern's medical director, and have him give his perspective of the COVID situation on campus. Frequently, I've had the opportunity to ask Dr. K questions about different aspects of Northern's COVID response, and I find his insight so helpful. And I thought the campus would benefit from hearing from him as well. So welcome, Dr. Kirkpatrick, and thanks for coming to give an update.
Thank you for having me.
So our numbers seem pretty low to me. What's your assessment of the COVID-19 cases at NMU for the first month of the semester?
Well, we've been seeing the semesters, each successive semester is getting a little bit better. And so true to that form, this semester has been much less exciting than the previous two that we've dealt with this. And we're finding a pretty stable and low amount of COVID on campus at this time.
Great. One of the tools that I know the campus community has really enjoyed has been our dashboard. It's really kept people informed. So how do we get numbers for our dashboard, and can you explain that process?
Sure. So the information that goes on the dashboard comes from a variety of sources, some of which, most of the cases actually come through the health center that I take care of. And so through the lab there, we do testing with PCR and antigen testing on a daily basis. We still have very rapid results in most cases, sometimes 15 minutes for antigen testing and PCR testing as soon as 1 hour after we collect it in some cases. So the bulk of those cases actually come through our own shop. I work closely with the Marquette County Health Department, as does the rest of my health center. And so we, for the dashboard, we kind of collate information from the Marquette County Health Department if they have a case that they know is tied to NMU, be it a faculty or staff member or a student that perhaps was tested off campus. They will relay that information to me as well. Oftentimes it's just the numbers and so forth. We share only what we have to as far as protected health information, but that partnership allows us to try to keep that in check. The other thing that we've employed recently was the Safe on Campus email. And so we've had a few reports this week of people being tested back home or perhaps tested outside of the clinic at the health center, testing positive. And so those go directly into the dashboard as well.
They do. Well, and you mentioned the terrific partnership we have with the Marquette County Health Department. Can you tell us a little bit about contact tracing and how contact tracing works?
Sure. So for most of the cases that originate out of the health center, I myself or my staff will go through the resources that we have. The IT group here at Northern has built a really wonderful program that gives me a lot of information that I might need about housing, including the vaccination card uploads, which we started last spring actually. My primary focus with that was always to have that to help with the contact tracing, and it's been immensely helpful. So if we pull up a positive case, I will contact them directly. Oftentimes we have an opportunity to speak to suite mates or roommates at that point, and then also interface with departments and classrooms and so forth as the necessity arises.
And what's the current CDC and Health Department recommendations regarding isolation and quarantine?
So isolation is currently a recommendation of 10 days. Now, the thing that we always find is that when people are tested, invariably they've already been sick for a couple days in most cases. And so when we calculate that 10 days, we go back to the start of their symptoms. So oftentimes when I speak to somebody, perhaps they're on day 2 out of 10 at that point. For people that confirm to be the Delta variant, which is the more virulent form that we are seeing circulate currently in the United States, the guidance, if you have confirmed it to be Delta, is actually to go to 14 days in some cases. Unfortunately, most of the testing that can confirm it being a Delta variant is done by the state lab, and so for that reason, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get those test results back.
I see. And how has the quarantine situation changed at NMU from last year into this year?
Well, we had a very busy start of fall semester last year, and so we were fortunate to have a large capacity of quarantine and isolation rooms at Spalding Hall. As myself and my team managed that area, we had as many as 78 people in isolation and quarantine at one time. That number has fallen dramatically as each successive semester has occurred here. Now with the vaccination and the guidance about if you are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, meaning that you've had your second and final shot, or a single shot in the case of Johnson & Johnson, and you're 2 weeks from that last shot, if you are exposed and fully vaccinated, the guidance is that you mask for 14 days and take a test in 3 to 5 days. So for a lot of those cases, they do not have to go into formal quarantine. Currently, we're using Spooner Hall, which has, I just have the first floor of that, and I've had no more than 5 people at a time in there for the whole part of this semester.
Very good. And can you give us an update on the current testing situation at the NMU Health Center?
So as I said before, we have a variety of different types of modalities that we use. The antigen testing is what gives us our fastest results. And so if you get an antigen test that's positive with somebody who has symptoms, that's often enough for us to diagnose COVID and to move onwards. The other testing availability that we have is we have a machine called the BioFire machine, which is a really fascinating thing. It not only will test for COVID, but also 21 other pathogens, such as the flu and the common cold rhinovirus. And so when we employ that, we may get a negative test for COVID, but it might hit on one of those other 21 things, in which case you have an alternate diagnosis, which is very nice. The other thing that we're employing is that the UPHS, the local health system, has really ramped up their testing and are doing a really fine job with the PCR testing. And so if we send out a sample for PCR testing, they're testing that at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. every day. And so I can often have an answer by as early as the next morning on that as well.
We all know we're waiting for guidance regarding the White House's statements around potentially requiring vaccines, and that guidance is going to come from OSHA and, of course, MyOSHA. But one of the scenarios could be a set of protocols for testing with that. How do you expect that we'll be able to comply with weekly testing if that goes into effect?
Well, I'll say that Northern's in a really good place right now if that does occur, and we're just waiting, as you said, for more guidance about how to go about that. But we have close to 90% of our faculty and staff that have voluntarily given us their vaccination cards for validation, and so that cuts our 1,200 person workforce down to about 125 that would need to be tested right now. We believe that there are probably more people that are vaccinated but just haven't uploaded their card at this point. And so that becomes a much more manageable number when you get down to about 125. We had a lot of experience last year, of course, testing with the mass testing and the weekly testing. And so we could have the option of employing some type of strategy like that. Or I've also been investigating other options such as a send home saliva test. It looks like these can be mailed directly to our faculty and staff members, and they could collect those and return them, and then all the results would come back to me to review them as we have done in past mass testing.
Good. And just the last couple of questions around vaccines. Are we still vaccinating on campus? And will the NMU Health Center be involved with boosters?
Yes, so we are very much pushing the vaccinations, and so in the last couple of weeks, actually, we've gone to the Dome, the Superior Dome, to vaccinate some of our athletes, as well as having them come to the health center. For our general population and for our students and faculty and staff, the health center is still doing what we call Pfizer Fridays, and so we're giving Pfizer vaccinations every Friday. We've been doing a fair number of those. We will also pair up with the Marquette County Health Department when it comes to guidance about the booster shots, and so we expect to have both Moderna and Pfizer available through ourselves or through the health department in some type of collaboration.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for doing this today. I know the information I've always found to be very helpful, and I'm sure all the folks on campus and around the community will find that helpful as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.